What's up, guys? Welcome to the Liquidicast. I'm Ron, and I'm joined here today by Thomas Euler and a very honored guest, Alex Muehl. He is the Director of Marketing and Digitalization at Borussia Dortmund. So, Alex, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to start this with a question, Alex. This is something that we don't really do too often on the Liquidicast. It's a little bit different, but I think it'll be interesting. So, your LinkedIn account says that you're super into books, that's one of your top hobbies. So I want to ask you a question about books. Okay, so if you can have one person write a biography about you, it can be either a normal biography or even like a fictional narrative where you are the main character. Who would that person be? It can be an actor, an author, a director, a friend, a family member. Who would that person be?
Wow, that's a tough question. I probably will answer straight away with a bias because normally it's the latest book I'm currently reading and really enjoying that probably gives me inspiration for that. But I'd go with Don Wilson because I'm currently reading through one of his thrillers, and he's such a great writer with a great suspense. I would just be curious whether he could turn my CV into something that is as intense as his books usually are. But that would be a great challenge. Yeah, would love to see the outcome.
Okay, cool. I mean, that's the beauty of biographies, right? Like, how much of it is real? How much of it is slightly exaggerated? Make things seem cooler than they appear. But yeah, thanks for joining us, Alex. I think, as I mentioned, you are the Director of Marketing and Digitalization at Borussia Dortmund, which means a lot of your work and a lot of your expertise and perhaps your experience has a lot to do with what we do at Liquidity, and it has a lot of parallels with what we're interested in, what we talk about. So I think, the natural parallels there. We're super excited for this conversation. And I think a good place to start is probably your origin story. Just how, a short intro of who you are, how you came to where you are.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me. Really glad, and I think we'll enjoy this session. So the running joke that I normally bring if people ask me about my qualification for the job and the position I'm currently holding is that I got a really solid two-sided education that prepared me for this job. So the one thing is I'm from around town, so I grew up like 10 kilometers from Signal Iduna Park, and I've been on the yellow wall, on the gelbe Wand, back as a kid in the 90s. So sort of like I get this genuine fan socialization and qualification. And the second one was that I have a track record of working, I think, 16, 17 years in digital and marketing agencies. So, and that, I think the nice thing is to really cultivate both viewpoints and try to blend, emulate that into my day-to-day work. But career-wise, I started as a humanities, doing a humanity master in the 90s, and then studied in Sweden around 99, 2000. So spent a year in Stockholm with the Erasmus program. And that was, of course, at the hype of the .com boom. And Sweden being Sweden, they were pretty ahead and pretty adaptive when it came to new technologies. And then as an expat student in that country,
internet.
Yeah, at that
Back
time,
then.
and a public IMAX in the university library. When you compared that to IT infrastructure in Germany, that was a difference. But really sensed pretty quickly that this is some kind of medium. This is a space where I would really love to work in. And that's then what I did. So I started, after finishing university, I started at a digital agency in Hamburg as a UX designer. Back then, early 2000s, wireframes in PowerPoint, that's what we had.
Did we then already call it UX?
No, it was called Online Konzeptioner.
Okay.
And then trying to translate this
because
with online conceptionist.
Then you would have been super early to UX.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, it was really like, but it was essentially really that. It was anticipating user flows, crafting wireframes, doing digital copywriting, did that for a lot of platforms. I relaunched MTV, Burger King, just to name a few. And then stayed on the agency track, switched to network agencies around 10 years ago, and worked in Düsseldorf for Havas and TBWA. And then really being the digital guy in more classical orientated advertising agencies and building digital business and digital teams.
But so you didn't really work close to sports at this time. It's not like you were in like these sports marketing agencies or...
Not really. We had, in my first agency, we had a spin-off called Deep Blue Sports back in the days, and they did sponsorship activation for brands that work with FC St. Pauli or the VfL Wolfsburg. So, and I was kind of like the digital guy for them. So we were shared resources. So these were my first steps into sports marketing, but I really never had dedicated sports marketing clients, to be honest. Until 3 years ago, I got that call that started the conversation that then putting me essentially in at the sweet spot where I can really blend like personal passion and professional expertise, and it really feels nice.
Cool. That's a great segue to get a bit topical, maybe, because what I would really love to hear from your side is about the digital transformation in sports. Of course, it's a big topic that everybody is talking about, but it's also, I guess, comes with your role that is pretty much what one very important aspect of your current job at Borussia Dortmund. And given that it's a challenge that the entire industry is talking about, thinking about, and working on, quite frankly, it's awesome to discuss a bit the ins and outs. And I specifically think that the fact that you were on the agency side and more in the digital market and then went into sports adds an extra layer of perspective to it. But where I would like to start is from your current point of view, what would you describe as like the main challenges that you think sports, or you can even talk specifically about football clubs, need to tackle in the next 3 to 5 years, and why?
I think, wow, as you said, it's a wide space talking about digitalization in general. I mean, I think the core challenges are defined by my take on digital transformation in general. And I think everyone has its own take on it, but my perspective is that digital transformation means the need for organizations to adapt to changed behavior and attitudes and expectations of their customers or their user base or their fans. So I think that's at the core. You know, people use digital technology, and the way how they live their lives, how they consume what they love, how they find new interest changes through the use of digital technology. And so that would be my starting point. And then driving from this also poses the main challenge for football clubs or for sport in general, because I think the attitudes and behaviors of fans have changed through digital technology. I mean, the explosion of potential digital channels, the development of almost tribalism within the fan base. You know, there's a niche for everyone, and every niche has its own space where it communicates with a certain jargon and specific memes. And the way one niche communicates is absolutely hated by another niche, you know? So bringing all that together, I think that adds an extra layer for football clubs in terms of communication, especially for big clubs as Borussia Dortmund, because we're so big that you really can't do the classic one message fits them all storytelling that clubs and organizations used to do.
Maybe for a bit of context, not everybody might know how many people work at Borussia Dortmund. I mean, certainly everybody knows Borussia Dortmund, but what are we talking about in terms of organizational scale?
No, I would say around about 800 people.
All right.
You know, in sports, in marketing, in distribution, facility management, event and catering. It's really, that was the fascinating thing for me also when I changed. You're getting into this club essentially that is active in so many fields of economic activity. It's still absolutely fascinating.
Like a truly global brand. Truly global brand, right?
It is, and when we went to Asia in November, December, that was one of the most fascinating things. After Corona, after not being in the market for 3 years, and then you arrive at Singapore airport, and you got a huge crowd cheering to you. You have a massive turnout at public trainings and training matches, and back to our point, these are all people that mainly get the club, the brand, the way we are through digital channels, because not everyone gets up 3 o'clock in the morning to watch like the Saturday 15:30 game. And that was really, again, simply for me, a big insight how their expectations and the way how they keep track of what we do really differs from other segments of our fan base. Really interesting.
What I love about your definition and the way you started answering this is that you first start with the different environment that you're now operating in, and that is really driven by in the case of a club, by what do fans want, but this also impacts how your organization really needs to work, how it needs to operate. And back in my consulting days, so in that sense, I guess we are quite similar, because we now work in the sports, or very akin to sports as an industry, but we have these histories in different fields. And what I always found the most challenging for many organizations out there is really the part where it comes to overcoming like the organizational structures that you have on the inside, that in many companies I work with, again, not sports clubs specifically, but you're in a very functional organization, for instance, and then digitization works a bit differently, right? Your customers want to interact with you, but they don't really care what department it is. But so a lot of early websites were sorted like departments internally, and that obviously makes not a lot of sense, but you had to go through this learning process. And then, as you mentioned, there is also so much upside in digitization, just because you have this huge, potentially global audience, minus a few countries maybe that have huge firewalls. But leaving that aside, it's really for a company like a football club that lives from the attention that they have, such a huge opportunity. But I think, going back to the initial question, like the main few challenges that you are focused on, what do you think are those? Is it more on like the finding fans on the communication side? Do you think the key challenges are more like in on the data end, or what is like your strategy? I don't know how deep you want to go about yours, but
yeah, I can sketch out a few things, because I think both examples that you just brought up are actually true. Because on the one hand side, the opportunity, of course, lies in winning new sympathizers and turning them into fans. Period. And that's easier done through social media channels and digital communication, because you have the opportunity to interact with these people on a daily basis. So, and I think that works out really well. If you look at our English language channels, the BlackYellow channels, that they're really successful. And on the other side, there's still this general challenge, and I think that's a challenge that not only applies to football clubs, but almost to every organization or company that's active in social media, is that essentially all those leads and contacts that you're collecting there, they're staying there on third-party platforms, essentially. And we all know the issue with the organic reach and the ability to really activate that fan base and delivering messages to these audiences on these third-party platforms, because their business model is based on the fact that you, in the end, have to spend advertising money to really reach 100% of this audience.
Yeah.
So I think that is one problem. So and that's the narrative currently in the communication, and it also applies to football clubs, that the question how you convert people from the contact on third-party platforms like the Meta platforms or Twitter or YouTube, and then bring that over to your own ecosystem, to your own website, your own OTT offering, your own merchandise channels, and ideally then offer them an incentive to get a first-party data, whether it's a newsletter sign-up or even like the single sign-on, so you get the complete data set. I think that is really one big core challenge. Also because no one's found the magic formula. I think we definitely have an advantage. I mean, I'm coming from a world where, please sense the irony. I mean, the people won't be able to see my haircut, but let me say I don't have that much flexibility in styling my hair. So I got a briefing from a shampoo brand, essentially saying, hey, Alex, can you and your team please come up with a great activation concept to win us over a few fans that we have on social media to create first-party data and signups? So these were the kinds of briefing that I was used to. And that was for like a real true German FMCG giant. So normally all about reach, but even then they know that they need to gain consumer data and get direct access to their customers. And we as a club are, you have to say, in the very comfortable situation. I mean, we have over 500,000 people in our database right now. We just cracked that crossed that line. That people are indeed willing to give us a data set, because the question is, why do I need to sign up with the shampoo brand? But if you have the emotional attachment to a club, you're more than willing of saying, hey, here's my email address, I trust you, please enlighten and enjoy me. So there is a huge opportunity. Nevertheless, for example, what we found is that it really actually struggled to convert international audiences. Works a bit better with German audiences. But with regards to international audiences, that is a challenge. So I'd say a third. So the challenge would be how to get people from third-party platforms into first-party, convert them into first-party data, and then linked to that challenge is to really come up with, let's say, smart loyalty schemes or designs that really help to tie international audiences closer to the club. Because in Germany, we have the, let's say, classic fan club structure that still works, although it's getting more and more complicated to win over younger fans into that really traditional way of fan engagement. But internationally, of course, we have like 32 fan clubs in the United States, but I wouldn't say that, the status as a fan club member will be the gold standard in the future, simply because of changing user behavior. And fan experiences and fan expectancy have changed.
Like, I mean, if listeners from Germany, they might know that there's like this really rooted tradition of fan clubs over here in Germany. But I think, Ron, that doesn't really exist in the States, does it? I mean, you have in college sports, you have some kind of local association that is very strong with this, but you don't have this notion of organized fan clubs.
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, it's starting to spring up a little more, especially because football is kind of rising. So you have like fan clubs for, like, for example, LAFC, the LA Galaxy. You started noticing that these fan clubs are starting to spring up. But I want to quickly comment on what Alex said. I think like sports kind of has like we keep saying fans, right? Like, oh, how to activate fans, fan engagement. I think like we forget that the very nature of the word fan, like, it's almost like it's a curse and it's a gift, right? Because sports are one of the few products. Let's just refer to sports as a product, as business, right? You actually have fanatics. You have people who are so passionate about their teams that it doesn't even matter what the product is or how successful the product is. Like, a Norwich fan is going to be a Norwich fan his entire life. But that's also like a curse, because then you're dealing with a rabid, completely passionate customer base. So like, trying to satisfy their needs, it could be extremely difficult. And I think there's like a question that I had for you, Alex. Like, maybe you had some good input on it. And it's something I've heard before, like a core challenge that sports faces, where it's your product, like you're only able to capture the attention of the fan, and it is good attention because you do capture it for the entire allotment of the game, but you're limited to only getting their attention when there's an actual game going on. And a lot of like sports brands are having trouble kind of transforming their brands into like entertainment brands, where they're basically approaching it like, how do we maintain the attention of the fan, 365, 7 days a week? how do we do it outside of the stadium experience, outside of when the actual sport is live? How do we like maintain their attention, maintain their engagement? I don't know. Is that something that you guys are tackling, or?
I'd say you said a lot of smart things there, because they really describe kind of like the transformative struggle we're in these days.
Yeah.
Because you referred, for example, to football as a product, and in economic terms, you can look at it that way, absolutely, because it's a commodity. That's, rights holders and people buying to get the experience. I think with regards to the things that we're discussing, or the question you asked, I think you need to widen that ankle and then look at football more as a cultural phenomenon, and more as an identity provider. That's, at least that would be my take on that. And that then translates into transactions as well, if you want to cover the product side. But essentially, I think it's one of the few things that ties societies together. For example, in Germany, or where true community building happens.
Yeah, I think
now.
Real quick, Alex.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt
Sure.
you. I think when I say product, I don't necessarily mean that, hey, this is what we're selling, we hope you buy it. But Thomas likes to refer to this a lot. We're like the attention economy, where the thing that you're selling is entertainment, and we're paying with our attention, with our eyeballs. So that's kind of more of what I meant. We're like, how do you maintain where the product that you're selling, which is football, how do you ensure that the fans willing to pay with their attention and with their time?
Yeah,
Point
taken. And in that, no, all good, because in that viewpoint, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I completely agree that it's a lot focused on match day. But the thing is, so there's two things that help us tackling that tension normally. And I mean, you guys know it. Try to organize a meeting with all BVB stakeholders to talk through an activation during Champions League season, and then try to find an appointment where everyone has time. So that is really the challenge. I mean, giving match days every 3 days, it's you don't really fall into that trap, because you have to do, and you actually do, constant storytelling around the match days.
Yeah.
And the great thing, and we really built some content production capabilities over the last years with BVB TV, having internal content creators, dedicated social media people. There are so many stories to tell around a team that consists of like up to 25 individuals, and then there's the women's team, and then there's the U23, then there's eFootball activities. Then there is a lot of CSR work, where we actually also offer another angle of identity building, so that I don't think that we need to worry about our content calendar. So there's enough engaging topics that we want to tell, and that we need to tell, and that people really then crave for. I think from a club's viewpoint, with regards to that challenge, is of course you want to tell the stories where the fan is. That has always been the guideline of a social media engagement, for example. Let's monitor our fans and find those platforms where they're active, and then let's be there as Borussia Dortmund and give them stories and storytelling. But then really trying to figure out how to engage the people on these platforms to that amount that they say, okay, I want the deeper engagement. I want to tie myself much more to this identity offer or the stories that this club has, and then doing the conversion and bringing them over in your own ecosystem. Because
I mean, this conversion and this step, I think it can't be emphasized enough how critical it is, right? Because currently, like if you would look at it a bit cynically, and it's not completely true, obviously, because you have some ways to monetize reach on social, but really, I think most sports clubs, and not only in football, that goes for the entire sports and even extension entertainment ecosystem, is like producing and creating content on social media channels for free, being essentially a content supplier to these platforms, who get all the eyeballs, all the attentions. And I mean, nobody would be on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok if there wouldn't be this content. But the platforms, of course, don't produce it. You do it, and that's all fine. I think it's a very great business they have. But then this attacks in a digital attention economy, as Ron alluded to before. Of course, like we have a German saying, it takes the butter off your slice of bread, meaning to those not German in here, like they take what should be yours, and in the end that is true, right? The people are interested in Borussia Dortmund, in football, in sports.
Yeah, to a certain degree, because I mean, to that point, you have a point there, definitely, and that was, by the way, the most interesting effect that I had when I joined, because coming from the agency side, I was talking even to like big reach and awareness oriented FMCGs players. All I was doing was talking about mid and lower funnel solutions. Mm-hmm. You know, so if you're in marketing discussions, people don't tend to talk about the big creative anymore, or how can we reach XYZ people. So most brands are currently looking for, okay, how can we deepen our engagement with our customers and then getting a direct access to them. Yeah. Now, the convention in sports marketing has been just what you say: create great and engaging content, deliver it to B2C audiences to build up reach, and then monetize that reach by collaborating with B2B partners in a sense of, okay, we can give you visibility, emotion, and a positive connotation. And don't get me wrong, this still really works and is the main use case for sports marketing still. Nevertheless, so what's been on my agenda for the last 2 years was essentially to still strengthen that inventory, but at the same time then also offer additional inventory that offers more mid and lower funnel solutions to our partners, you know, getting more targeted information, creating new insights from our fan base. And of course, you can look at the role of social media networks critically in a sense of, hey, we're putting the content for free on their platforms and they're monetizing it essentially. But at the same time, it is, of course, we would have never, I think we're roughly above 50 million followers worldwide across a numerous number of channels, and I don't even know the quality of the Chinese reporting these days.
Yeah. But pre-social, I know massive. Where you're getting. Like pre-social, you would never have gotten this reach, and you get all this distribution for free, even though you're now algorithmically throttled. So yeah, of course,
absolutely.
And you can. That's why I said to a point, because of course you can monetize, like selling this like advertising that you put in sponsored content formats and all this. You can obviously do. So you still earn money from it, and yet I would believe that the platforms themselves are able of turning the attention you bring to them even more efficiently and maybe effectively than you can do it, and that is just by the means of platform ownership, which, as you say, getting this conversion done, I guess, is really important for the core business, especially if, and here I would be curious on your take, what do you expect there in the next year? So internationally, especially in the US market, like broadcasting rights deals, they have skyrocketed and exploded, and is that something you also expect here in Bundesliga, or do you expect internally, if you can talk to this, that different revenue streams or a broader mix of revenue streams will be important in a few years?
I think they will, period. I mean, because just because you have a certain revenue stream from distributing media rights doesn't mean you stop exploring new forms of revenue streams. So that's basic economic. That's a basic economic approach on how to see how you can broaden your revenue. So we're always, of course, trying to experiment and innovate on these topics. And but just with what you said about the platform, you're absolutely right. My point would be just it's not either or. I mean, we still want to preserve that reach on these platforms.
You have to.
While having to convert as many people as follows. And it might be even the bitter truth, we don't know, but we're working on it to try to find out that the let's say the loose connection to clubs via a social media channel, especially in international surroundings, might be enough for a few people. You know, you also have especially in the US, probably the second club phenomenon. You know, people picking a favorite club in the English league, the Italian league, the French league, and so on. And getting then these loose contacts converted is an extra challenge. In Germany, of course, you have a higher loyalty, and that's where conversion is then much easier. But again, and turning back to the main challenges, in the end, it really breaks down to what I said. How can an efficient loyalty program look like for those people who are really saying, okay, I want to convert, I want to stay closer to the clubs, I want to get rewarded for my activities, and we're constantly trying out mechanisms around that and trying to empower our ATO infrastructure to deliver just that.
Alex, real quick, I think the marketing adept people listening to this are probably following, no problem. But I think there's one thing that I think it'd be good if you gave a little bit of clarity on. You mentioned top funnel, bottom funnel, middle funnel. Can you kind of explain and just real quick, like me and Thomas, you know, we're proponents of the whole idea of having your own platform, but you know, we also do understand and we agree wholeheartedly that is a bottom funnel mechanism. That is something that should just be like a welcome addition. Can you kind of explain what that means when it comes to like bottom, middle?
Absolutely. I mean, it's and really quick. It's just in the end, it's marketing models that you really use to structure and analyze the way how you as a company try to communicate and essentially sell to your customers. And upper funnel means if you imagine a funnel drilling down, and at the bottom of the funnel is actually someone buying a product. And then you start, okay, how do I get someone to the bottom of that funnel? And it normally starts at the top where the funnel is really broad and a lot of people are getting the attention of the marketing message. So that would be what I just said. It's important to reach as many people as possible with your messaging to get them into the funnel. Then mid-funnel, you're having the situation where you say, okay, let's aim to get the potential customer engaged, show him a message where he reacts and shows his interest, you know, clicking on a banner ad, following a link, reading an article on a landing page, reading a review,
going further down
Amazon
the
on the product. Exactly. And then once you and there's technologies that allow you to really measure what kind of customer is at what phase at the funnel. And then, of course, the aim is, okay, how you push someone who has left a clear data signal of, okay, I'm interested in that product. How do you push him or her to the actual conversion, the purchase of the product? And that would be then the lower funnel, bottom funnel.
And your takeaway was kind of that currently with sports advertising and sports marketing, that top funnel is really important.
Exactly. So sports marketing is mostly used for top funnel communication to give brands and stories visibility among sports fans because of the attention that the communication of a football club really gets. I think the potential is that we can create an inventory for our partners to say, hey, we can deliver your message also to people who have raised their hand or are really close to the club because they are already registered with our club. And we know a thing or two about them. So we probably might know whether he or she would be interested in doing a test drive for a sedan or an SUV, and then can craft a specific sponsorship message within our own ecosystem on our own channels. Hence, you know, the business needs, so to say, to bring people on our own platforms to deliver exactly those mechanisms.
And I think, not to be clear, like this top funnel is, if you can provide it, it is increasingly valuable just because like audiences are eroding. I said these broadcasting rights deals for sports globally or have been exploding over the last decade or so, because while we know phenomenons like cord cutting, obviously a lot of big mass media reach has eroded. There are much more things that people give their attention to stay on this, and sports is one of the few things. Just because live sports is really the most interesting live, even though I'm for instance an on-demand watcher, but that's a different topic. But like live sports still captures these huge live audiences relative to most other things that, for instance, are on TV. TV used to have all the reach. Now nobody watches TV anymore in a certain generation. Of course, there are still other people around to watch linear TV, but it's getting less and less. Long story short, if you can provide it and have these audiences, it's super valuable. That is why we have trends like influencer marketing and so on. And of course, sports in general is very well situated to play a role in this. But what I wonder about, like football to me is like in this sports game a bit like the incumbent, right? Because you have been there and football grew in the mass media age. That is when it really exploded, when the game grew to the scale we are at today. And now I'm interested in the future, because I know I follow some sports that are more niche, like cycling, for instance. They really use digital to grow audiences that they didn't have before. But you are not starting from a small niche sport point, but you are from the mass media era, and football was used to these massive audiences. And I think like to provide this top funnel and maintain these audiences, I don't even know if it is possible to maintain the same sizes, but even still be relevant to a large number of people on this new set of channels, I guess is strategically super important. And of course, all of you football clubs have built a infrastructure on social, but I believe you increasingly have to think about yourselves really as like content companies. And I believe some people in the industry believe this as well. I don't know if everybody does. What's your take on this?
I think I can't speak for everybody, but I think that the whole topic of content creation and communication is really these days at the core of Borussia Dortmund's organization as well. So because we're putting massive resources into content creation and deliverance, and so I'd follow your route absolutely there. And I think with regards to maintaining the reach, you're right. We're coming out of the age of mass media. And that's also the growth story of football over the last 10 and 15 years, with essentially media income really going through the roof. But we have to be aware, because what we really see is a few challenges coming up. I mean, changed media consumption behavior by younger audiences, the twist in the fan journey. I mean, just the fact that a lot of really young people come into football, or an interest for football, through playing FIFA, where they're playing foot and creating their own individual teams based on star players that they buy within the game from different clubs. I mean, that whole thing that younger people tend to follow star players rather than clubs. You know, I mean, I was born into being black and yellow, at least grew up to be black and yellow. And I'm not sure whether that is the case anymore, as linear as it was back in the 90s when I was that age. Yeah. So we're really seeing a challenge with young audiences. We're also seeing really a challenge with keeping, and that is really a brand topic. So it's not in my digitalization wing, but in my branding and marketing discussions that I'm having, we're talking a lot about how we need to position the brand Borussia Dortmund so that it stays relevant for younger audiences beyond the culturally, exactly. I just said cultural phenomenon. Culturally beyond the action on the pitch. I mean, that will always be at the center, and sporting momentum will give you always an extra boost. But I also view it as my role to make sure that we stay relevant as a focal point for attention and cultural interest, even if we don't win 9 matches in a row. I prefer, of course, to have both, but
sure.
You know,
And I mean, there are examples.
There
are examples. Sorry to bring up a extended competitor. I mean, they are second league, but St. Pauli is a great example of how you can have this relevancy, even though you don't have the sports success coming with it. But they are probably in the top 5 of known German football clubs internationally, even though they play in the second league, just because they have this type of strong identity. And I think Borussia Dortmund, of course, is also very, very good at this. And that is, that I think gives you an advantage there. But I also see, like, talking with many in football, it like there's this concept of the innovator's dilemma, right? That you, like, if you're a really big company and some new and innovative thing happens, it's very small, and you have this big business and this big audience and customer base, and so you make the good decision to cater to this customer base. But then new companies can grow in these niches and outperform. And I think that is, for football specifically, one of the things that really is a challenge, because you have like all these fans that have been around since 15, 20 years and longer, and they probably have very different needs and ideas about what football should be, how a club should be, than younger upcoming generations. And now you have to cater to these different segments, and that is not super easy, and it's not straightforward what the right answer is in this spot. But like you say, you have to try to still get this done somehow.
Absolutely. And it's really, I think the most important thing is to not fall back into a too defensive way of like, okay, we can't change anything. So that's not the way. I mean, and sometimes we're like, there's other clubs out there who just jump on every trend and innovation and then let's try out. And we really try to do this a bit more focused, in the sense of that we're having huge internal discussions and we have an intensive exchange with our fan base. So topics like our eFootball team, the question of playing VBL or not. We've really discussed this with our fans, and then also really got pushback on specific topics. But we still maintain that very constructive dialogue, because what we essentially do, and I'm a complete advocate of this, being a UX designer. In the end, it's user research, if you want to put it into technical phrase. I mean, the need to really understand the interests and the needs of your fan base is really the core to innovate. And which is, again, another argument for creating first-party data, because then you can measure user behavior and see, okay, that article is relevant to them, that article is relevant to them, and that article is relevant to no one. Let's stop doing it, And so I think that is the only way forward. And the challenge is even bigger for us, simply because we have so much reach. And my best example is, I mean, maybe you know the story of the BVB women's team. We started at Kreisliga, lowest division in Germany, and we'll work our way up year by year up to the women's Bundesliga. We could have done it differently by like taking over another team and rebranded Black and Yellow. We decided not to, after we asked the fans, by the way. Yeah. But here's my point. If you watching this live stream of a women's BVB team on our Twitch channel, you're surrounded by this young, let's say, empowering community, really open, really interesting. They just love the fact that one of the players of our women's team is also a Twitch streamer at us and works in my CRM team, which is also nice. If you watch that same game on YouTube and go into the comment section, you really see a very, very different mindset with regards to women's football as such. And I prefer the tonality of the Twitch stream. But the other segment, they're also fans of Borussia Dortmund and united in their love for our club. So we have to take them seriously as well. Not follow them straight away, because I wouldn't follow a sexist advice on women's sport. But nevertheless, we have to take their mindsets into consideration when and what exactly we do communicate.
They are still a stakeholder of Borussia Dortmund. So there is a, like, talking about digital transformation and going back to what you initially explained about your history. I think what would be really interesting to understand is you came to Borussia Dortmund from an like outside perspective, not having been in the sports business, and now you are there for more than a year, right? Maybe even 2 years.
It's 2 years in May.
2 years in May. Okay. So when you came in, what did you expect to see as the main challenges? But now you look at them differently. So what has changed in your perspective coming from the outside and now being in there almost 2 years?
I would have, I mean, because I just had the fans and outside perspective of the club, I would have expected to have way more integrated cross teams workflows across the club with regards to the different, what's Fachbereiche in German, you know, so the different teams,
Departments,
so to say. Departments, yeah, true. And that wasn't as much the case as I expected. You know, for example, the first thing that I said when I started, when I took the marketing role, was saying, can we please stop to differentiate between sales campaigns and brand campaigns? Because that makes no sense at all. Every brand campaign has to sell something in the end, and every sales campaign has to carry the spirit of the brand to make it all work. And so there really was, and I think that is a structural challenge in football clubs, because they grew so fast over the last years, and the digitalization was so disruptive that the internal operating system of the clubs often didn't catch on. You know, also because my running gag is football clubs are the most agile organizations in the world, because essentially we work in 3-day sprints from match day to match day. And that's also really important to understand what's on the pitch rules. You know, the match day is the fixture where all the energy of the club is focused on. And that makes it really hard to take a step back and look, okay, how do we operate this thing, given that we have certain technological circumstances changing. And I think that's where that's where I added some value, bringing in the external perspective and trying to steer things up. And I also was really met with great openness to do so, simply because a lot of people felt, okay, this is too rocky sometimes, you know. And I said, hey, let's make it that way. That will make it easier. And I think we're making great progress on that. But it is still complicated, because the playing field in comms and in digital marketing and all the aspects that are touched by digitalization are so many that it's
basically
don't need to worry about my to-do list.
The entire organization very often. And I think, like I said earlier, back in my consulting days, like I at some point really learned a lot about organization, and because that is really a critical part to transformation. You have to change your organization if like the things your customers want and the things that you have to deliver to your customers change, then the way how you get this done also needs to change, and therefore do you very often have to adapt your organization. So good on you that you're on doing this and getting it done. And it's not a project that is usually done in a few weeks, so I can feel you on this one. So let's change gears a bit, or let's go a bit deeper, depending on how you want to look at it. But of course, the way where we also work together, or the field, is Web3, which I think when you joined Borussia Dortmund, it was one of the biggest hype topics in sports marketing, in particular the angle of NFTs. And this has changed. The market situation now is completely different right now. If you want to use like the slang of this world, we're currently in a bear market. But so to me the question is, how do you look at this field? Do you think it was a fad that is going to leave, or what is the substance in all this hype of Web3?
I think Web3 has substance, to put it first, simply because I do believe in the possibilities that the blockchain offers from its core principle and the idea behind it. I think no one has really been smart enough right now to get that golden use case that makes the thing really go mainstream. I think that's the core challenge. And I think a lot of the hype that we saw last year was fueled by this essentially trying out to create a use case that hopefully will get mainstream audiences on the Web3 track. So, but at the core, I think it's solid because it offers a solution for existing problems, and it's as easy as, if you, the easiest example that normally everyone gets is if you buy a ticket at Borussia Dortmund, you currently do get an email with, of course, a wallet that you can put in your iPhone, an e-ticket that you can put in your iPhone wallet, but you also get a PDF that you could print out. Now, if you send that PDF to 20 of your friends, who has the valid ticket? In the end, it's the one who's at the gates first.
Yeah.
I think there's smarter ways to do it. And that's just like the most easy to get example of why documenting ownership over digital over digital goods is a true use case. A lot of other Web3 mechanisms that have been pitched or have been around, to be honest, I think they're solutions looking for problems, but there are problems out there that can be solved by Web3 mechanisms. We touched on one, the whole loyalty thing. I think it's definitely something that can be addressed through Web3 technologies. I think the main challenge is to get Web3 access as user-friendly as possible, because I think really right now it's an early adopters thing. And to be honest, maybe I'm growing old. That might be the case. But even I think it's really complicated to get into the do's and don'ts of that crypto world, and the inherent lack of trust, simply because there's no many known brands, even big brands that you think you could trust collapse. So I think the way forward is to do Web3 things without branding them necessarily Web3, but then really focus on the added value that the technology delivers in terms of user experience and making it as easy as possible to access.
I was just about to say, like, as you were saying that, I think your response is, it reminds me that like most, we didn't even really define what Web3 is, because I think it's like different to everyone, right? So like, you addressed like all the issues with blockchain. I think all of it is fair. I think all of it is super accurate. But to me, like when I think about Web3, like the next iteration of the web, I think like decentralization. As fundamental as I can make it, it's just decentralization. That can be through blockchain. That can also just be through maybe Twitter implementing an advertising mechanism where everyone can partake on the revenue that Twitter generates. To me, that's a Web3 implementation. That's a Web3 mechanism. And I think like with blockchain, like all the issues that you could say about blockchain, you can apply to just the concept of decentralization in general, whether it's government, whether it's companies, whether it's friend groups. As soon as you decentralize decisions or decentralize anything, you have to assume or hope that all of the participants act in good faith and actually act in adeptness too. Like, are the participants adept enough to have decision making in Borussia Dortmund or in whatever brand? If any brand gives decision making or participation governance to its fans, I mean, it's a big risk. It's a big risk scene if they're going to make the right decisions. And I think, like, just to echo kind of what you said, like, it's tough, and there's a lot of bad actors coming into the field. But I think that when you see bad actors go to a place, it probably means that there's something there. There's some value. There's some attention. There's something there that scammers and bad actors will come and try to take advantage of.
I think the point that I would most definitely want to double down on, Alex, is the last sentence that you said. Look, let's probably not even talk about Web3. And I couldn't agree more, because the fan doesn't care. And you said, well, the onboarding of users to this is so, no fan cares and shouldn't care. And I think the wrong mindset to take if you go about this is to say, hey, how can we get the people onto Web3? Because nobody wants to be there. But it just needs to be the things that are there on the web, or mostly today on the phone for a certain generation. People don't even know that apps use the internet sometimes, right? They just use apps. So to work for this type of user, it needs to be super simple. You just need to use it. And what is under the hood, frankly, most people don't care and should not have to care. That would be my take. And that is,
that's like carrying. It's kind of like carrying what programming language Twitter is written in.
Yeah,
like, who gives a shit?
Yeah,
you know.
And I think here probably let's look a bit at the stuff that we do together, because I think it is quite an interesting and frankly, in my obviously biased mind, it is a very good example of actually achieving this. So what we do together, you already mentioned the BlackYellow app that you do, that is based on Unyfy, our content and community management system that is Web3 ready indeed, and uses these mechanisms, but they are mechanisms to achieve a greater good, namely a cool user experience. That is how I would put what the Unyfy part of the equation is. But not everybody who listens to the Liquidicast might know the BlackYellow app. So Alex, how do you describe what you do with the BlackYellow app to somebody who doesn't know it?
Let me try, and I'm biased as well, but
sure.
For a reason. I mean, and that's the usual disclaimer. No, what we're doing with the BlackYellow is, just as I said, the key challenge that we face in digitalization is how we convert people from the contents that we have in third-party platforms over to a platform where we have an ownership over the data and control, and can offer added values to fans that we can't offer on these platforms like Instagram or Twitter. Hence the BlackYellow, which does exactly that. So it serves as a landing page for deepened content that we activate through our BlackYellow channels. But it also covers, it's a content-fueled app, so it's driven by an English language newsfeed where we're posting dedicated English language content for all those fans who want deeper information than what we can share on social media. But what we really focus in there is fan engagement. And to make fan engagement to a certain degree playful and add a few options for fans to interact, we have, of course, as you said, Web3 technology under the hood, but mostly without the fan actually noticing that he or she is using Web3 technology, which is what I like about your solution. I mean, you register, you get your wallet created, and then you can start. And so we use essentially two Web3 mechanisms in there. Once we have fan tokens that we don't sell, but we reward users based on their user engagement with tokens that they can use to upvote, aka boost content, or that they can swap in for other digital assets whenever we have a similar activation, like Ask Me Anythings or fan votings and stuff like that. And then we do have, and I'm saying the dirty word right now, we're having NFTs in that app. We call them stickers or moments if it's video-based, which is essentially collectibles that we hand out as a reward for participating in a man of the match voting, for showing up at a place. So we had the tryout for at the Asia Tour, where we handed out flyers in the stadium in Malaysia and in Singapore and in Vietnam. People could scan a QR code and then got a collectible, a sticker dropped into the app that served as a reminder, hey, I was there. And that was, of course, super limited because you could only get it if you were in that stadium at that time.
So exactly. proof of attendance, some people would call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And but then also through that opening a direct channel to the people who were there. So whenever we had some kind of exclusive content that we would only want to deliver to this specific subset of fans, we can do it via that Web3 mechanism. Again, without the user actually noting it, he just gets a notification, hey, here's an exclusive piece of content. So that's roughly the story behind the Black and Yellow app. And what we then really see
so to play
is
a bit devil's advocate or ask, and I'm indeed curious because that's not a number we discuss every day among the two of us. So how many support tickets do you get of people asking you, hey, how do these tokens, how do these stickers work?
I think actually close to zero.
That's so what I would have hoped.
Absolutely, no, it's true. I mean, we wrote a really good FAQ section in the app, of course. No, but so the thing
I'm going to cut out the part. I'm going to cut out the part you said close to zero.
Okay, no. I haven't double checked, but normally if there would be a service case, it would normally end up on my desk because I'm in close contact with you guys and could answer it. But it's true. We had quite some controversy when we launched the thing, simply because, and that's a good example about stakeholder management in terms of innovation, because simply introducing that kind of mechanism sparked initial fears of taking away participative rights from fans that are executed through the traditional way of fan participation, and then transferring and monetizing that through via a token. But
you never intended to do this, right? I mean, it was before your time, but it was never the plan. And
that wasn't the idea behind it. But as it sometimes is with specific audiences, the worst case scenario was initially in their head. But I mean, that could have.
I mean, that is basically like change management 101. You will always have like if new stuff happens, there will always be fear, and you need to deal with it. But nowadays, do you get any kind of pushback against using these from users?
So no, that's been done also because we have been in close contact, and I think we have quite a decent number of German fans as well in our international fan app who like to play around with these kind of mechanisms as well.
So as you already alluded to, like when it comes to the BlackYellow app, that is, I guess, one of your important channels for the international audience, then you also mostly refrain from doing anything where you sell directly to consumers, to your fans. But how do you think about monetization in Web3? What is your philosophy at Borussia Dortmund, and also looking at the market more broadly? What do you think have the last 2 years or so shown as what are no-goes, and what are the interesting opportunities to actually also as an organization benefit from using this technology?
Well, I take a very Borussia Dortmund-centric viewpoint on that, because I think I'll start with the no-go, and I think the no-go would be to strip away participative rights that are already in the hands of fans, and then putting that behind a paywall, which is to a certain degree. So we would never do mechanisms that you sometimes see of socios. You pay to vote the entry music. Or to make a design decision.
It won't happen, Alex. I think European football or European sports, like, it's too grassroots. That's too American. Exactly. Like the Super League is an example of that. That won't fly here.
So I think these are really the no-goes. In terms of Web3 monetization, the approach that we have. So that's the big no-go that we'd never try out, but we are pretty much observing other mechanisms and looking what works and what doesn't work. So we were quite defensive through the hype. So we didn't do something like Liverpool did with selling like this huge drop of collectibles. We were really cautious when it came to that, simply because we also didn't want to essentially feed speculation, because at that time a lot of the market movement was driven by speculation, and we were kind of reluctant to use our brand assets to be part of that speculative hype.
Good on you, I would say.
I think so too, but thanks for saying that as well. What we did was, of course, using the BlackYellow app as a test and learn field. What kind of activations would spark the user engagement? And then the other thing that we did is through selected partnerships that were also timed to a certain degree driven by league rights, then activate within existing communities that are Web3 driven, where you have a clear use case, either collectibles like tops or a game like Sorare, and then say, okay, we can give you additional rights so that the users in that community can have a better BVB experience. But we were really defensively with regards to direct monetization of Web3, for example, through collectibles and stuff like that. But essentially, we're open to it. We're just looking for the right use case where we really can be sure that we deliver, as I said, an added value to our fans. Where can we enhance the fan experience so that the fan is really saying, okay, this is an added value for me. I might be willing to spend some money on that. And then we'd be completely open for that.
One thing that you interestingly didn't touch upon, and from a few discussions that we had in the past, you might be aware that we are quite bullish on this and building this year some more stuff on this end, is actually like bringing. We talked a lot about sponsorship and the importance of partners, and of course, like sports really is an ecosystem. You have the clubs, you have the other infrastructure of the sport, but you also have the brands, you have media. And I think something where really Web3 technology can add a lot of value is when it comes to interoperability within ecosystems, and to have a common shared understanding of the world using abstract terminology a bit, in such a network, such an ecosystem. And I think here sponsorship is a great opportunity to use Web3 and collectibles and unique experiences, because in the end, the definition, if we would look for one, is like we have a web of scarcity, of uniqueness. And these are, I think, very interesting design mechanisms when it comes to creating user experience, especially for fans, right? I mean, the stuff that you do, like every man of the match, you hand voting that you do in the BlackYellow app.
Yeah.
And as an avid user of this, of course, I try to vote, but you only, I think, give out like 200 or so of these stickers.
Yeah, right.
And I don't get all of these, and some look super dope, and I just want to have them. And I see people asking, shit, I didn't get a sticker, how do I get it? But then they are just too late. So that is really interesting. And just one little example how you can actually use this. And I think what we will see in sports specifically going forward is brands being very interested in using these mechanisms together with the clubs. And just imagine a case where you can say, okay, we have a fan, and they went to the stadium at the Asia tour, and now I'm able to identify this fan, but also a partner in Asia can, for instance, give a discount, to have a simple example, at the point of sale in the store if they go there, or some of these other tools. And I think these are the kind of experiences, and then in extension also monetization strategies that we will be seeing a lot more of in 23, and that frankly we try to build great toolkit for, so that companies like yours can use it. Do you have a take on this angle?
Absolutely. And first, that is so obvious that I didn't mention it probably when talking about it. No, simply because there's two sides to this. The first one is, again, it's essentially Web3 based assets like stickers or tokens. They are new inventory that you can brand and to deliver a branding to a fan when he's in an interaction. But that would still be awareness play, you know? I'd still consider that like upper funnel. But as you just said, the interesting thing is that Web3 offers you an additional way into the user contact. Because when I talked about lower funnel solutions during our podcast, I mean, one thing is, of course, to deliver that through traditional CRM systems, push notifications and apps, sponsored newsletters, maybe personalized content on a website if you're logged in, targeting via ad service, and so on. Now, the Web3 side of that is a very elegant one, because as you said, you can use a branded or sponsored token asset, a sticker asset, to actually say, by doing this, dear partner, you're getting a direct access to that fan, as long as you follow some rules of brand engagement and brand safety. But essentially, by delivering such a sponsorship in the app, you could easily think about creating a subset within our community, a community of asset holders of a sponsor asset. And I think that's something that will unlock so many opportunities. But I think that's also the thickest wood to drill, because it really requires also a change of mindset with regards to how do I want to play my sponsorship beyond the pure awareness game.
Yeah, I guess that is definitely right. I mean, when we talk to brands, we see that there is definitely a need for conversion, for deeper engagement as well on the brand side. So I'm optimistic that of course this can be learned, but of course, like it's something new. It also needs to be understood and then explained to the partners and so on. But I think therein lies therein lies a lot of opportunity, and importantly, one that will be much more acceptable to fans than you talked about, like the speculative things that we have seen in the traditional crypto, close to crypto Web3 market, and these will never fly with fans. I mean, whether you talk about like a crypto club currency traded on an exchange. I mean, like in your case at Borussia Dortmund, you're already a publicly traded company, right? I can go and buy stock, so that is one side. But even if you're not, I don't think that is what the majority of fans want. So even if they don't care, then it only reaches as a use case a minority. And then when it comes to super expensive, super rare collectibles, a former player of yours, I know, once set a record price for NFT sales on so rare. I mean, by definition, if you spend six-figure sums, most fans will never be able to afford this or to take part in this fun.
Yeah.
And also a lot during the hype phase, let's be frank, has been driven by creating the expectations that you buy something now and sell it for 10 times the price in a few weeks. And I think there is little substance to it. And so much like, I guess it's the Borussia Dortmund philosophy, it's also our philosophy. Like, if you want to create something of substance, you need to give value to your user and create something that users really want. And that is I guess the next iteration of Web3 use cases in sports, that will be much more focused on giving the users what they want.
Absolutely. And I think one challenge on the way, but once that's overtaken, that can get really big, is and you just said interoperability. And I think in the moment when companies that might be partners and sponsors start building their own Web3 infrastructure, then things get really interesting, because then you can really use a sponsorship and a Web3 platform of the club to deliver a sponsored asset, an NFT, a sticker, whatever you want to call it, the token. And you can get that in the club's app and then transfer it and unlock that added value in the ecosystem of the company.
Yeah.
Because as I said, in the end, what companies also want is first-party data, maybe even more than football clubs, simply because they have to pay much more to get that message across. We have quite still a decent share of organic and viral reach, simply because we have our attention. But to really fully unlock, you probably need some sort of Web3 infrastructure on the sponsor side as well. But once that is in place, then platforms like yours really offer a great link from converting fans, not only for the club themselves, but also from the club into the ecosystem of the partner.
And even today, I mean, it's probably one side of the product that you haven't been using so far, but of course, everything that we build is API based, and we have now the first few parties working just on the API. So even today, if you have a partner who wants to integrate with this, even on the wallet level. Say you want to do a simple use case, right? Like here's you gave out one of these man of the match day stickers with a partner on top, and now the partner has like a few hundred people who own this asset. Then people can just authenticate their wallet on the partner side, and all the partner would have to do is use a little SDK and talk to an API, which takes probably half an hour to implement. No crypto knowledge needed for developers on the partner side. And I think that is, again, like I loved your description of the our product before, where you essentially said people just use it, and that is the aim that we aim for on this end. But I think the same goes on this other side of the ecosystem. You need to make it easy for brands to implement. They don't want to hire like blockchain developers with this certain tech stack to enable it, but it needs to be simple, and that is the pathway where we currently are on when it comes to like the interoperability
out
side.
of box.
Yeah, make it out of the box as simple as possible.
Yeah,
but
which usually doesn't really go with Web3, right? When you hear Web3 or blockchain, you don't usually think one click. You think, oh, I got to save my seed phrase here, and I have to write it down on,
absolutely
ink and parchment and hide it in a case. Yeah.
And write a smart
Hence,
contract.
we don't use Web3 or NFT in our fans comms anyway. Simply just because you don't want to spark.
You don't want to be like that guy.
Fear of complexity.
You don't want to be like the dude from literally where I live. I think he's from Sindelfingen. He's down to like one password attempt left on his Bitcoin wallet, and he's got like, I think, €1 million worth of Bitcoin. Yeah, you don't want to be like that guy. He's down to one more attempt, Alex. And he's from
I just have a new example for first world problems.
Yeah, indeed.
Exactly.
I'd love to have his problem.
Yeah. Just real quick, Thomas, going back to something you said a while ago, Alex, I had a funny thought. You said that like with branding, trying to capture the attention of young audiences, it just made me laugh because my stepbrother, he was a Barcelona fan for the longest time, had Barca jerseys. And suddenly, I don't know what event happened, he started walking around with PSG jerseys.
I have an idea what might have happened.
I don't know what it was. It was around the time where Messi wasn't on the team anymore. Anyway, they follow talent, man. That's how young people are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But also to give you a final anecdote, and you will love to hear this one, Alex. I was just talking to a PR agency guy in the UK, and he said, "Hey, I'm usually a fan of another club. I think it was Tottenham, not quite sure. But my second team is actually Borussia Dortmund." And then he explained me how he became a fan of Borussia Dortmund. And he said, it's the stadium. I've never been to Signal Iduna Park, but just from watching your international matches, it's the best stadium I've seen, and I would love to go there one day. And I think that speaks to the power of football and the emotion that it can create.
Yeah.
And on that note,
No, just because it's also a nice closing remark. That is our key challenge in digital marketing. Because thank you for that story, but it's really true. You really get the club if you're in that stadium. 95th minute, winning goal, beer flying around, strange people starting to hug you, and the hair in your back is upwards, and that is something that show me a way to digitalize that.
Well, he got it over TV, just saying. So he understood it from watching.
But
yeah,
the real deal is
course.
being in the stadium, and that's really the core challenge. And that's the daily struggle for those who can't attend. Unfortunately, it's only 81,000.
Hey, Alex, when the metaverse is here, you'll be able to digitalize that creepy hug.
We'll cover that in the next episode.
Stay tuned. Cliffhanger.
So Alex, any closing thoughts that you want to share with the people outside there?
Actually, really, what I just said. I mean, it is really the core challenge. If you work for a brand, speaking in marketing terms, that is so dependent on an offline experience, being in the stadium, and that's what we always say, the ultimate conversion is to get someone into our stadium with an open mind, and he'll walk out with a black and yellow heart. Essentially, that's the way how it works, and that is really the constant challenge: how to bring across that feeling in digital channels, and maybe one of the core challenges for digitalization to bring that across. But we're trying to innovate around that, but I'm a bit skeptical whether we will ever be able to recreate that, even in the metaverse.
Yeah, we'll see.
It was a pleasure to have you on. We will discuss this topic in probably the next episode we do together, because teaser, I do have thoughts on this one, but no, thank you for your time.
Thoughts. That's what I loved chatting with you.
Probably I do. Well, no, but it was a pleasure to have you on. I think it was really insightful. Thanks for sharing so openly with the audience out there. I hope that the other listeners can take something from it, probably apply a bit of this to their own digital transformation journey out there. And with that said, if you like this here, leave a little rating and a review, 5 stars preferably. They really help us to get the word out. And have a
One
good
more
afternoon,
thing,
everyone.
Very quick shout out. If you guys are interested, we did launch another podcast. The name of it is Ask a Creator Economist. You can find it at unyfy.io/podcast. It'll be in the show notes. And yeah, you can head over there. You can submit questions to us, and we answer them live in a podcast format. So we answer creator questions all about marketing, growth, a lot of topics that have to do with what we just spoke about. So again, Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Thomas, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
We're thrilled to have you, Alex, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.